You wrote to Peter Dutton not all that long ago, warning him that he would lose the Australian federal election if he did not speak out against gender ideology. You wrote that gender ideology impacts women's sex-based rights, lesbian and gay rights, child protection, parental rights, freedom of speech, and belief and employment rights. You also went on to say, imagine losing your livelihood because you don't believe a man is a woman. I don't have to imagine it. It is happening. And in a cost of living crisis, I have to raise more than $1 million to fight the injustice by Labor. And let's just take a look at how Peter Dutton handled the question of gender during the election campaign.
What is your definition of a woman?
Well, that's a matter, obviously, that's been before the British courts. I haven't seen the detail of the case, and it's not something that I think is front of minds at this election. I think.
Sall, I guess you were right. As someone who was fighting for women's rights, how disappointing was it that the Liberal Party wasn't really strong on this issue?
It was so disappointing because we know that Labor is not going to fix this problem because Labor caused this problem. In 2013, under Julia Gillard's government, the Labor government brought in amendments to the Sex Discrimination Act, taking out the definition of woman and man and adding in gender identity, which made it this muddled free-for-all act where apparently sex means nothing and you can just claim to be a member of the opposite sex and be believed by laws, by courts, by politicians. And so it really is up to a party like the Liberal Party being opposition to do something about it. And it was right there. It was an open goal. Like our two biggest allies in the world are the US and the UK, and they are fixing this problem. I don't believe that Australia is going to be the only country in the world left saying that a man can be a woman, but something actually has to be done. It cannot be left up to the citizens like myself to be dragged through courts, paying hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to fight for reality. Men aren't women. We all know this. And to say that it's not at the front of Australians' minds, I think is actually really detached. I'm not naive. I don't think that any politician had to center this in their campaign. There's lots of issues, but voters care about lots of issues. And so this is affecting parents, it's affecting workers, it's affecting women, it's affecting lesbians, and it's time something was done about it.
It's interesting because Peter Dutton was constantly labelled as a kind of Donald Trump throughout the election campaign. But just look at how Donald Trump handled essentially the same question on what is a woman.
What is a woman, and why is it important that we understand the difference between men and women?
Well, it's sort of easy to answer for me because a woman is somebody that can have a baby under certain circumstances. She has a quality. A woman is a person who's much smarter than a man, I've always found. A woman is a person that doesn't give a man even a chance of success. And a woman's a person that in many cases has been treated very badly, because I think that what happens with this crazy issue of men being able to play in women's sports is just ridiculous and very unfair to women and very demeaning to women.
And Trump has been consistent with his position and his language. Here he is again over the weekend referencing gender.
Helps when you know that borders are not racist, speech is not violence, America is good, terrorists are bad, men can never become women, police are not criminals, and criminals are not victims.
There's certainly a big difference. You know, is that what's really missing in Australian politics?
100%. Donald Trump really did change the zeitgeist on gender ideology when he started speaking out about it. For some people, that might be a problem because of the baggage attached to somebody like Donald Trump. My position on that is, I don't really care who wins it. This is just such nonsense. It's such a distraction from important issues. While being an important issue itself, it just needs to be fixed. I personally don't think that Donald Trump cares about women's rights all that much. What he saw was a political win and he took it. The benefit of that is women get their rights back. And so for someone like Peter Dutton, or now just the Liberal Party in general, to not realize that this is such an obvious win for them. All you have to do is say to the other side, what is a woman? What did you do to the Sex Discrimination Act? Watch them squirm and then say, why would you believe them on anything else? Because if you cannot answer such a simple question with facts, we should not believe you on literally any other policy. It's the most obvious lie that a person can tell, especially a politician.
How much support are you receiving on both sides of politics?
In terms of from politicians?
People, everyday people that might lean left, might lean right. How much support is there for this issue?
So much support. I get thousands of messages. My entire legal campaign is funded by regular citizens. In terms of political support, as close to zero as you can get. I get messages every single day from mums and dads and workers and women just saying, I can't speak out about this, I'll lose my job. So I'm supporting you so that you can hopefully be part of what ends it. And so like, I know that this is an issue. Who are the politicians listening to think that it's not? Or to think that in Australia, we're any different from the US and the UK, that women don't deserve rights down here, or that children can be born in the wrong bodies down here? No. Australia had an opportunity last year with the Tickle v Giggle case to actually kind of lead the world on this. Instead, it went in the complete opposite direction, and so we have to appeal that now. But in August last year, the Australian Federal Court could have said, of course, men are not women. It would have beaten Donald Trump, it would have beaten the UK. Now we're behind once again.
So, as you mentioned, the federal court judge ruled that your app, Giggle for Girls, had indirectly discriminated against a transgender person, Roxanne Tickle, and of course the appeal will be heard in a few months. How confident are you about the appeal?
I've always been really confident because I actually think that the truth always wins eventually. Sometimes you just really have to work for it. And in this, that's the case here, is really having to work for it. But as I said, I just don't think that ultimately Australia is going to be the last country doubling down on this absolute nonsense lie. And, what has happened in Australia is as I said earlier, a complete muddling of our laws. It's very different to what happened in the UK and the US. They actually got to our laws here. They changed them. However, with gender identity being in the Sex Discrimination Act as it is, it doesn't actually even help the people it's claiming to help. It doesn't help all of these people with gender identities or who claim to be trans or anything. It literally only helps men who claim to be women so that they can override women's sex-based rights for spaces, sports, and services. It doesn't help women who claim to be men. It doesn't help any person who claims to be non-binary. They are all still relying on their sex-based rights. So for anyone to try and say that this is a left versus right issue or a culture war versus people who aren't trans versus people who claim to be are, it's not. This is about reality and making sure that everybody has rights. And because everyone has a sex, the best way to do that is with sex-based rights. Men should never, ever have been given any kind of privilege to go into women's spaces or sports. And so now we have to fix it.
You've no doubt been attacked just for speaking out about this. Can you remind us why you're fighting for it and why it's so important?
Well, in a sense, I never had a choice. I created an app for women not knowing that I was doing so in the one time in human history when anyone was claiming to not know what a woman is. So I was brought into it because of creating an app and attacked from that moment on, attacked still to this day. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter who sort of came into this world during this nightmare. And every time it gets really hard or some people are being absolutely ridiculously cruel, I just look to her and I'm like, I cannot send her out into the world where she does not have the right to say no to a man if that man claims to have a gender identity. I would be a bad mother if I didn't do something about it. So I think it's just, sometimes you don't want to be doing something, but it falls on your lap and you have to rise to the occasion. And so here I am.
Sall Grover, well done on all the work you are doing. Thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Really good to speak with you.
Thank you so much.